Hey bibliophiles and those raising bibliophiles, without ratings and warning labels, finding which books are appropriate for your children to read is like navigating wild terrain without a map and a compass. I don't know about you, but I have been burned more than once handing my child a book that I thought was clean and appropriate for them to read. I'm a fellow mom, educator, reading specialist, and literary enthusiast trying to find great books for my children and yours to read. So if you're looking for a real review from a mom with a biblical worldview, then welcome and enjoy this week's book review. So this week's book review is for Book 4, Danger in Zion National Park by Aaron Johnson. This, like I said, is Book 4 in the National Park Mystery Series. This installment picks up with the same historical storyline of Abe and Namita seeking information about the mysterious map on the cube. They eventually make it to a man in what is today Zion National Park to receive the information that they need. But that information simply puts Abe in another adventurous path further north. Before continuing on, he returns to a family to retrieve his horse Gideon. However, when he arrives, the barn is on fire and the family is desperately trying to keep the fire from jumping to their own house. After much effort, the fire is out and Abe learns that the horses were stolen before the barn was set on fire by two outlaws who had been chasing him. So Abe, Namita, Mr. Kane, and his son devise a plan that allows them to capture the two outlaws and retrieve the horses. The efforts are successful, and Abe and Namita part ways as Abe travels really to his next destination, in which he does eventually retrieve the mysterious box that the children now currently have in their possession. So fast forwarding to present time, Jake, Wes, and Amber are excited but also confused on what the next leg of their journey is actually going to entail. After some sleuthing through the journals, a note, and a scrapbook, the three realize there are adventures awaiting that Jake's grandfather planned a year in advance that includes a new delivered package and special hiking and climbing permits for some precarious trails in Zion National Park. However, from the outset, the children are struck by an odd sense of being watched. It isn't long before they discover that drones are keeping track of their every move. So before I go any further, I'm going to read just a little bit of the opening of the book just to give you an idea of the author's writing style, especially if this is the first time. You'll notice with some of the subsequent books in the series, the author kind of gives a recap at the beginning, which I think is great, depending on how long it may have been between the reading of the books for your reader. So I'm actually going to read from chapter 2. Chapter 1 is set in the 1880s, and that is the story of Abe that I kind of gave you a little introduction to there. But I just want to read a little bit of the current day story, and you get an idea of Wes and Amber and Jake. The RV pulled out of the Grand Canyon's Mather campground. Mom and Dad, Wes called up to the front of the RV. Yeah, they both replied. Do we have enough time to watch a movie? Sure, his mom called back. It's about 5 hours before we get to Zion. Thanks, all three kids said in unison. Amber, how about you pick this time? Jake offered. She opened the drawer under the TV screen and began looking through the DVDs. Wes stood up and slid both hands into the pockets of his new jacket. Jake, I still can't believe you got the agent to give this to you. He spun around to show off the blue jacket with FBI printed in yellow on the back. Then, out of nowhere, he stood stock still, and a look of shock spread across his light brown and freckled face. Wes, are you okay? Jake asked. Wes slowly drew his right hand from the pocket. It held an envelope. He examined it and then handed it to Jake. It's addressed to you. Jake sat on the couch and stared at his name written in large capital letters. Why would the agent do this? He wondered if it was a trick. He broke the seal and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Amber sat down beside him. What's it say? She tucked a loose strand of her long brown hair behind her ear. Jake squinted in confusion and held the note closer to his eyes. There are no letters, no numbers, nothing, just a folded blank piece of paper. Jake tossed the note on the RV dining table, his heart pumped with slow beats of anger. It's just a joke, a trick, the agent's way of making fun of us. Wes leaned in to look at the empty sheet of paper. His mouth fell open and he began pacing the floor, his hands on his head, gripping his hair. Wes, what's going on? Jake asked. He stopped his pacing. He could barely contain his excitement. "It's not a trick, Jake. It's spycraft." "Spycraft?" Amber asked, looking down at the blank paper. "I mean, what if he's trying to help us? He wouldn't want the director to find out, so he would have used invisible ink or something." Amber grabbed the note and pressed it against the window. She studied the now translucent paper. "I'm still not seeing anything. I'm going to try something brighter." She clicked on the phone's flashlight and set it on the table and held the note over the light. Jake scratched his head and shrugged. "There's nothing. He's just trying to distract us." And so I'll kind of end there, but they kind of keep going. And this is where a lot of the fun stuff in the story is readers are going to get just a lot of additional information and things that they can kind of learn from. And so they end up making a black light and find a way to do that. So that way they can figure out what actually is written on the note. So just a lot of like little tidbits of stuff like that. In some of the earlier books, it's like building a fire. And so there are like just spy tips or survival tips, just fun stuff. Code breaking is in here. So there's a lot of fun things for readers. So undeterred, even though they start sensing that something is watching them, the children do set out on their big hike with permits in hand, and their parents are really not too far behind them in the trail. Unfortunately, a young man named Cody, who they encountered at a visitor center, has made Wes really the target for his bullying. This really added personal conflict in the story that is really affecting Wes primarily, but Jake is also having his eyes opened to the racism and evil behavior his cousin and aunt have experienced. Jake is quick to come to Wes's defense, but he also learns that a physical response is not always the right one. Despite Cody's nasty behavior, the children work together to actually save Cody from near death when he suffers from heat exhaustion and dehydration. Prior to the climactic episode with Cody, Jake receives a package with a cassette tape. On the cassette tape is a recording from his grandfather giving him historical information of what has led him to this point and the additional information that he's going to need moving forward. Seeking a treasure using the map from the cube, the children, along with their parents, are able to traverse the Narrows. In an offshoot canyon from this location, they ultimately work together to uncover the hidden red barrel worth millions of dollars. However, they also have to survive a flash flood before making it back to their parents and their campsite. Once back, the children decide to tell their parents the extent of the scavenger hunt left by Jake's grandpa. And at first, the parents kind of believe the children have kind of made this up and that it's some sort of campfire story. However, after their insistence of the truth and sharing some additional details, they finally accept their story. And the story ends with more questions for readers as Jake finds out that there is a back to the cassette tape. And that really is where book 4 is going to leave readers. I want to encourage you to go to my website at holdingsteadfastreaders.com. You're going to find some additional details about this particular book, quotes that I think were worth mentioning, some additional details with the characters. This is once again a great installment in the National Park Mysteries series. Aside from positive themes about perseverance, endurance, and teamwork, I really appreciate how Johnson adds complexity between the social relationships with the children. As Jake works through feeling selfish and then jealous, and then here we have the bully of Wes kind of being exposed. So Johnson offers readers a glimpse of like real life situations that they may have experienced themselves or real emotions that they may have felt. And he kind of gives a positive way of working through these situations and these emotions, and the parents help guide their children through these things. Furthermore, readers who have enjoyed the first 3 are definitely going to fly through this one. I highly suggest book 4, they're going to be ready to kind of devour that. I have book 5, and I hope to have that out to you very soon. Again, parents are going to appreciate the way that like sensitive topics are handled, positive themes, parental guidance that's offered, and also just a story that has adventure, independence, trust, and assurance, all great themes and messages for our young readers. So I hope that's helpful to you as parents looking for great things for your children to read, and I hope you'll join me next week for another book review.